Hello, hello. Happy Monday. I am so glad that you're here. I'm Amanda Warfield. I am a simplicity focused content marketing strategist and copywriter, and I'm on a mission to help course creators and other entrepreneurs simplify their marketing so that they can make a bigger impact in less time. Now, I am very curious. Did you work today? I know that for many people, today, not for me, for everybody in America, today was Memorial Day, and some people worked and some people didn't. So, just curious if you spent Memorial Day working or if you spent it doing something else. Both my husband and I just worked today. I know a lot of people like to kick summer off with Memorial Day. Living in Washington now, um, it's not really summer yet, so we just worked today. Today was just a typical work day, and I did client work today. Mondays are my client work day. I've mentioned that in other videos where last week's video in particular, I shared a lot more about my routines and rhythms, especially as far as how they work with marketing. But Mondays are my client days, and so I spend most of Mondays just working on client work. And this is my fun little way to, one, make sure that I actually get dressed and ready, but two, get plugged in with everyone who, um, yeah, just feel plugged in and not just quite stuck all alone in my office. So, very curious about that. Let me know in the comments if you worked today or if you did something fun or um, whatever it is that you did on Memorial Day today. So, today I want to share some of the absolute worst advice that I have heard as a content marketing strategist. Now, some of this is stuff that I heard and I believed when I first started my business. Um, I guess I haven't shared much of like my business background story yet here on YouTube. I've shared it numerous times over on the podcast, but I haven't shared it here on YouTube. And when I first started my business, I actually had no idea how to market my business, or so I thought. Um, I felt like I didn't understand marketing. It didn't make sense to me. I really struggled to grasp how to use it effectively, which I think is what makes me a great marketing strategist. Actually, is because I don't have that background training. I truly had to dig deep and figure out what works and what doesn't. Um, and a lot of this advice is stuff that I did believe because I saw other people doing it, I saw other people talking about it. I believed was helpful. And so some of this is harmful advice in some ways. Some of this is just not really, it's not harmful, but it's not really helpful either. And it's kind of a waste of your time. Um, and so I just want to talk about some of the worst pieces of advice that I see. Get my little sidekick. There we go. We just can't help but whether I'm recording a podcast and she's yelling or I'm doing a YouTube and she's in the frame. She just can't help but try to get some attention. So, one of the first pieces of advice I want to share that's just, again, not harmful, but just kind of a waste of your time and harmful in and of the fact that um, it is, it's a harmful mindset, I guess. It doesn't harm your business, but it's a harmful mindset, which I'll get to, is the idea that you need to engage for the first 15 minutes after you put out a post. Um, and the belief that the algorithm is going to push your content better if you're engaging within the first 15 minutes. And I think if you are someone who has a massive audience and you immediately are getting comments on that specific post as soon as you're putting it out, maybe it does help the algorithm some. Most of us are not going to have thousands and thousands and thousands of followers, right? We're not going to have these massive 28, 45,000 followers where we're getting comments immediately and we need to sit there and comment as soon as it comes in. because if you're just engaging on your profile, it's probably not gonna help that much. Um, but 2, even if you're someone who has these massive amounts of followers and is engaging right away, you in theory, it could push it better for you. But in practice, those 15 minutes aren't really just 15 minutes because you have to take the time to either you've scheduled your content out, which I hope you have, um, but maybe you didn't. And even if you did schedule it out, you have to stop what you're doing at a specific time to put the post up, get it up, and then stick around for 15 minutes scheduling it. And for those of us that have some time blindness, maybe that can be really really time consuming because it's not just the 20 minutes or so where you're putting the post up and engaging and making sure you're interacting. It's the I've got like 10 minutes. I need to make sure I don't miss it. I want to make sure I'm on time. Maybe I'll just scroll for a little bit, right? And then that's assuming you don't get caught up in scrolling after you're done engaging. It can become such a time-consuming thing, and then you have to really ask yourself, "Is this 15 minutes, 30 minutes, however long that I'm spending each and every day engaging, is it truly moving the needle in my marketing, or could I spend that 2 hours a week doing something else to truly move the needle?" Maybe instead, you're spending 2 hours a week pitching yourself to be on podcasts. Which of those is gonna do more to grow your audience and move the needle? It's definitely going to be being a guest on a podcast. And so it's not gonna harm your business to spend the first 15 minutes engaging, but it's also not necessarily helping your business all that much. And there's so much more you can do with your marketing time because again, we wanna spend the least amount of time marketing in order to make the largest impact. And those 15 minutes, 2 hours a week, however it ends up adding up, that you're spending just engaging right after you post just to push the algorithm a little bit more, you could spend that doing so many more things that are actually more helpful for your marketing and for your business. So that's the first one. This whole idea that, oh, I have to engage right after I post, it's not worth it. Now, the next one also has to do with the algorithm. The second worst piece of advice, and actually this one for some reason frustrates me most, and it's again, not that it's necessarily actually no, this one is harmful to your business. We'll just put that out there. Um, this one I have a little bit of a soapbox for, so hang on tight. But it's the idea that the algorithm is going to punish you for scheduling out your content is just not true. It's not true. You, first and foremost, Padme, please don't. The door's not even shut. She just hates it being mostly closed. Okay, so the idea that you have to schedule out your content in order to, or that you can't because you'll be punished by the algorithm is garbage. First and foremost, even if it was true, it's similar to the last point, it's not worth your time. It's not worth your time to sit there and every single day stop what you're doing in order to schedule out a piece of content, especially on social media where our reach is so low, our engagement is so low. Instagram right now, engagement is just tanked. Um, and that's because they want you to pay, right? Like they've rolled out these tiers where you have to pay X amount to get it. Engagement is tanked because they want you to pay, period. And so worrying about if it was true, it's not true, but if it was true that you would get docked by the algorithm for scheduling out your content, the time you save in the long run and the mental capacity you end up with from scheduling out your content is so worth that dock. Again, it's not real, but if it was, it's so worth it because you gain so much more from not sitting there and having to put out your content yourself and instead being able to sit down and schedule it all out. But here's the other thing. Facebook, which owns Instagram, it has a native scheduling tool. They, meaning Facebook, Meta, whatever they want to be called at this point, they did not put all of the manpower, the time, the energy, the money into creating a scheduling tool that they would then in effect punish you for using. So the fact that they have a native scheduling tool in and of itself just shows us that that's not true. The algorithm doesn't dock you for using a scheduling tool. And even if it did, it's really not worth your time to worry about. One of my biggest pet peeves in the marketing sphere is people who train other entrepreneurs to fear the algorithm and to try to please the algorithm because we're never going to please the algorithm. It just we will not do it because what the algorithm wants is for you to pay. And if you've done Facebook ads or anything like that, you know that even then it's hard to know how to please the algorithm. They don't want you to figure it out, right? Because they want you to continue to give them money. So, anyways, that's a bit of a soapbox, but worrying about the algorithm in general, but especially with a scheduling tool, one of the worst pieces of content advice that I have ever heard. It's just not worth your time, it's not worth the effort, and it's so much better for you to just spend that time and energy doing other marketing things for your business. Now, the third piece of just terrible marketing advice that I'm not sure if there's still a thing. Again, this is one that I can remember very vividly it being a thing for a long time around like 2019, early 2020. And I'm not sure if I just don't hang out in the spaces where they're talked about anymore or if they're truly not a thing anymore. So, if this is something that you see, um, things like using bots to boost your engagement or boost your followers. And by bots, I don't mean there are some native like AI technologies which we can call bots um, that can help increase your engagement so that you're, you know, I don't love autoresponders, but you can set things like that up for your social media. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, and again, these may not exist anymore, but in case they do, and in case they're still being pushed, the bots where it would be like you would set it up so that it would comment, you could give it XYZ things to comment, and it would go find other profiles to comment on their stuff in the hopes that they would then go look at your profile and follow you. But the problem is that you're having to comment such generic things in order to make these work, um, that most people probably aren't gonna go look at your profile anyways because it's not it's not doing anything for them, right? Like, we've gotten to the point where we're almost desensitized to these, like, really generic comments, and we can go, "Oh, that's a bot," right? But along with bots, and again, like, mini chat, you could call a bot. It's different because you're not going out and using it to find new followers, you're using it to connect easier with your followers, if that makes sense. So, like bots or those follow for follow loops where it's this whole train of people who are like, all right, go follow all of these people, and all these people will follow you. And all you're doing is increasing your audience size or follow, unfollow, that whole thing. That was really big for a while, where you go and you follow a bunch of people, and as soon as they follow you back, you unfollow them, and you just hope that they don't notice that you're not following them. And people would do that to make it seem like they had these big audiences and they weren't following a lot of people. It was like a authority builder almost, but then when it's not real, it's not true authority. And here's the thing, all of these, the idea behind them, the premise behind them, the goal behind them is to grow your numbers versus focusing on growing your true audience. And a small but engaged audience is a million times better than having a massive following that isn't engaged with you because at the end of the day, why do you want an audience? You want an audience so that you can sell to people. Random people that follow you are not going to go, "Oh, yeah, let me buy this thing that they're launching, because it showed up on my feed when they were talking about it." No. You're only gonna buy someone if you know, like, and trust them. And so for these people to actually buy from you, they have to build a relationship with you. And when you're doing things like bots and follows for follows and the follow unfollow thing, anything that is intended to just grow your numbers and not necessarily your audience and your relationships, it's a terrible piece of advice because it's not growing your bottom line. And once again, you're wasting time that could be better spent in other marketing areas. A similar idea to that, the next just terrible piece of content advice, number 4, that's out there is the idea that you need to create a list of 10, 15, 20, however many people a day, and reach out to those many new people each day on social media. Um, that's a terrible piece of advice, to be quite honest. Um, in a similar vein as the last point, it's simply just trying to grow your numbers without really trying to grow your audience. And you could argue, but if you're reaching out to them, then it's different because you're actually trying to connect with them. And yes and no. So, yes, it is different because in this case, you're truly doing the research to find people that you want to reach out to. And you're trying to start an actual conversation with them. But no, because the goal is still the same. It's still how do I grow my network? How do I grow my audience? And not how do I connect with this person that I really want to connect with? And there's such a difference there. And the intent truly does shine through. And it does make all the difference in the world. And that's not to say people that do this can't be successful with it, but when we're trying to simply copy someone else doing this because, oh, I, you know, grew my revenue by X amount because I got these new clients because I was doing reach outs, trying to simply copy that method versus let me actually reach out to people that I really want to discuss and talk with and have questions for and love what they're doing. Those are two very different things. This is one of the pieces of advice that, like, a small tweak, I feel like makes all the difference. If you have a list of people that you're like, I truly want to connect with these people, and maybe once a day you're making it your mission to actually go and connect with them and comment on their stuff and share their things and just be a cheerleader for them, that's totally different. This piece of advice that I'm talking about here is strictly when you're just simply trying to, I got to find 20 people to interact with today. Let me just search Instagram until I can find 20 different people. There is a difference there, and that intent again means everything. So the next just awful piece of content advice, content marketing advice is getting rid of unengaged followers. Now, when this comes to your email list, I am 100% on board and I think you should do this regularly. I go through every single month and I remove unengaged people on my email list, people that aren't opening my stuff, that aren't interested in what I'm emailing them, that aren't paying attention to the emails, that, have unsubscribed. I'm removing cold leads constantly from my email list every single month. That is something you should do for your email list because eventually you get to a point where the bigger your email list is, the more you have to pay per month for a lot of these email providers. And so you are sending emails to people that are cold leads that haven't opened your emails in months, aren't gonna open your emails probably, aren't interested in what you're sending them, and yet you're essentially paying to send them these emails. You wanna clean those out. I don't think, and this is one of those pieces of advice that it's honestly not terrible advice. I just personally think, as someone whose focus is simplicity and time management as far as it goes with marketing, I don't think it's worth your time to do. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, I go in and I clean out my unengaged followers from my Instagram following, and it helps with my engagement on Instagram." And again, it probably does. It's not that that doesn't work. It probably does help because, again, a smaller, more engaged audience is going to do a lot more for you than a larger, unengaged audience. But the amount of time it takes to go through and figure out who's engaged and who isn't is really, really time consuming for Instagram versus like your email list. At least with Kartra, which is what I use, you can really simply go in and go, who hasn't opened an email in the last 3 months? Okay, delete. And it's really quick and simple. I go through and clean out my email list in less than 30 minutes every single month, right? But for Instagram, you're having to go through and physically remove each and every single individual person. And if you have a lot of people on your list, that's really, really time consuming. And so once again, it goes back to the idea of, will it benefit your business? Probably. Will it benefit it enough to be worth the time that it's going to take you to do it? No, it's not going to. And so that's one of those where it's like, you could do it. It could help with your engagement on Instagram. It's probably not worth it. That hour or more that you're going to spend, however often, removing unengaged followers, um, you could spend it doing so many other things. That's a whole guest podcast interview you could record where you're getting in front of a brand new audience. That is, you know, however many, 5 maybe podcast pitches that you could send. That's um, whatever it is that you're doing, a whole blog post that you wrote for guest blogging for someone's blog, right? So it's one of those, is it worth it? Is it worth what I could be doing? Because let's face it, there's never enough time to do everything. So how do you determine what the best things are for you to spend your time doing marketing wise? So that is, I believe that was number 5 for some of the worst pieces of content marketing advice that I've heard as a content marketing strategist. The next one, number 6, is that social media is the only type of marketing that you need. I have found it so interesting in the last year or two to see people who their entire business was focused around a specific piece of social media content have now started teaching about other types of marketing that have nothing to do with social media. And that's not any shade to anyone. Our businesses are always going to grow and evolve as they should. And I know plenty of people who started off, my business has grown and evolved where I started with this focus and then this focus and then this focus, which again, probably at some point I should share my whole business story here on YouTube, but that's normal and natural for you to go, oh, well, this is the thing I'm really loving right now. And as that becomes no longer necessary, maybe you move into other things. But it is just a super interesting trend right now where we are all really sick and tired of social media in so many different ways. Um, but there are still some people who, because it's what they teach, they are very focused on do XYZ and get these results from social media, and it's going to expand your business. Social media cannot be your only type of content, and it cannot be your main type of content either, which is another thing. I don't know if I ever really see anyone say this is the only type of content you should be putting out. Sometimes, rarely. I have seen it a couple times. But for the most part, it's just someone gets so heavily focused on one type of content that they kind of lose the forest for the trees, right? And so they get stuck with, oh, social media, social media, social media. And because that's all they're seeing as they're following all these people talking about social media, that they end up feeling like that's all they really need to focus on, or even what they need to spend more time focusing on. When in reality, your social media should kind of be your last bit of effort when it comes to your marketing. Your highest focus should be on your long form content. So whether that's a blog, YouTube, podcast, whatever, your biggest focus, the time you most spend, the attention you give most to should be your long form content. And then you can take that long form content and repurpose it into your email newsletters and your social media content. And then that way you have this plethora of content, because long form content gives you this much space to teach someone and social media gives you this much space, right? You've got this plethora of content that you can send people back to, but you also have more time and ability to build that know, like, and trust factor, right? Let's be realistic here right now. If you listen to my podcast, that is going to grow your relationship with me way more than just seeing a post on my Instagram feed. And now with doing YouTube, you've got my voice and my face and my weird mannerisms and the way I talk with my hands and all of the things, right? That helps you get to know me a lot faster and a lot better than just a social media post. And so it's important that social media is not your main focus. And some people push it probably a little bit more than they should when they're teaching other entrepreneurs how to market their business. Again, we want to make sure my whole focus is to help you simplify your marketing so that you have the biggest impact in the least amount of time. And if you want to do that, social media should not be your focus. And then the final piece that I want to share today, number 7 of just terrible pieces of content marketing advice that I've heard, is that any content is better than no content. And this is another one that is a yes and no. Because if we're talking about, and we're talking to someone who is a perfectionist, who continues to avoid putting content out there because they're being a perfectionist, because they just don't feel ready, because they are scared or fearful or whatever it may be that's holding them back from putting content out there, yes, any content is better than no content. I have students, I have members in my membership, I have clients even that have come to me and said, I want to put content out, help me out. I want to start a podcast, I want to do X, I want to do Y, I want to do Z, but I'm scared. In that case, get started, get over that fear, because once you start doing it, it's going to feel so much easier. Octavia, you were exactly who I was thinking of. Any content is better than no content. So if you're like Octavia and you've got, Miss Octavia has an entire podcast ready to go, branded, everything. She's got, I believe you have episodes recorded. Any content is better than no content in that context. 100%. However, if you are not like Octavia and you are putting content out and it's not a perfectionist struggle, you any content's not better than no content. I would rather see you take a step back for a bit, slow down, create a strategy, create quality content, and put less content out moving forward than simply putting content out for the sake of putting content out. You don't have to be, and this I think often comes from this idea that we need to show up constantly, right? We think that the more we show up, the better it's going to be for our business. And that's just not the case. As long as we're consistent, and those two, constant and consistent, not the same thing, right? As long as we're consistent, putting out quality content less often is going to be so much better for your business and so much better for your audience than constantly putting out mediocre content. So, if you're someone who is struggling to get your content out because you're being a perfectionist, this one's not for you. You put that content out, any content is better than no content. If you are someone who is trying to constantly show up, who is trying to just put out as much content as they can, put a pause on your content. Take a step back, do a batch week, slow down, create strategic content, create quality content, schedule it out, and then moving forward, put out less content that's better at a lower frequency. So those were the 7 different just awful pieces of advice that I've heard as a content strategist. Any content is better than no content, that social media should be your main focus, or you should be spending the majority of your time working on your social media content, getting rid of unengaged followers from social media specifically, reaching out to X number of people per day, any of the bots, the follow for follow loops, the follow unfollow game, those number games where it's just all about making sure that you're just checking a box really instead of truly trying to connect with people. Actually, Octavia does a great job of this. Speaking of Octavia, she constantly is sending me reels about cats and Disney and just things that we connect on. and it's genuine, and maybe she does have a checklist somewhere where she's saying, "These are people I wanna connect with," but it's so genuine because it's, here are things that we connect on and that we together find enjoyable, common points of interest versus, "Oh, let me just DM Amanda and say hi," you know? Um, anyways, that's a whole tangent, but just having that list of people to check off and say, "Hey, XYZ," there you go. And then basically anything to do with the algorithm. If you're worrying about the algorithm, you're not worrying about the right thing with your marketing. I can't even make a Target list. That's because Target tells us what to buy, not the other way around. No, I'm just kidding. But it's genuine engagement, right? And so that final just awful piece of advice is to worry about the algorithm. Don't worry about the algorithm. It's not your friend. It's not for you, and it's not worth your time. So if anything you're doing, if you have any practices that you're doing that are taking up time and mental space in your business that have to do with trying to please the algorithm, you can go ahead and just throw them away. Rip them up, burn them. It's done. We're not going to worry about the algorithm anymore around here. All right. Now, if you have any questions at all about any of these, or maybe if you've heard other piece of advice that you're like, what are your thoughts on this? What's your opinion? What's your take on this piece of content advice that I have heard? Go ahead and leave a comment for me. I would love to do more videos like this where we're just kind of sharing ideas about opinions and pieces of advice that you've heard about your marketing. So if you have some of those and you're curious, go ahead and pop them in the comments. And if you heard me talking about batch week and you're like, that sounds great, I can't even bother to like sit back and take a step back and figure out what it is that I need to do because I'm so overwhelmed by how much content I'm putting out, I'm going to link a video for you all about how to simplify your content creation. And it's just 3 simple tips on how to simplify so that you can kind of get your content under control and possibly even attempt a batch week for yourself. So I will link to that below. And you can check that one out next. And if you have any questions about content marketing, batch week, simplifying your content, anything like that in general, go ahead and drop them in the comments because I would love to answer those for you. And if you liked this video, please be sure to like it, hit subscribe, all those things. And I will be back next Monday, same time, same place, 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Pacific time to chat more about content marketing with you. See you then.